Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi there. Great, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing great. To start, I purposely was like, I'm not putting on my contacts this morning
Good.
because I watched that premiere for season three and was just like, yeah, this is an experience. I mean, I've had them my whole life, so it was nice seeing, someone older try and like navigate having to wear glasses. But I do love the how the show kind of explores that awkwardness of growing up, which is so it is your story, but what is the joy of getting to, relive it in this way, which is so kind of humorous and removed? And, I know that school is not that way.
Well, it's interesting, because you're there and you're filming sometimes, and you go through different phases. You're writing it, and then you're the pre-production, then you're actually filming it, and then a couple of times you kind of forget it's about you in a way. Like I remember I was filming a scene once, and they're doing it. And I thought, something like this happened to me once. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? No, this happened to me, and that's why this is happening. So that can be strange. But playing my dad on the show is interesting because it kind of forces me. I have these memories I put in the show that are important enough that I put them in a show. And memory is a very personal thing. It can be a selfish thing. You always look at things through your point of view. And then playing my dad kind of makes me have to think about what his thought process was and put things in a whole different perspective. And sometimes it can be like, these out of body experiences people have during surgery or something, like, where you're floating over yourself. I'm looking
Yep.
at it. But the neat thing has been really making me kind of stop and think about what everybody else in my family and my friends were going through in that moment. And it kind of makes things a lot clearer and gives you a better sense of the actual memory, really.
Yeah, does that help you though, remove yourself from like you were saying, like sometimes you're like, oh, this happened to me, and then you realize it's what happened to me. Does that kind of help you remove yourself from it because you're like, I have to think about what this man was doing. And like, do you always go like, what was my dad thinking, or do you look at it from like a character perspective?
Well, when you're acting it is when it really kind of hits you because that's all you can think of at that moment. It pop back
Yeah.
and forth, look at the monitors in between takes and stuff. But I'm dad now. And so that's like the kid's going through something. And at the moment, I'm like, he's being, oh, dad, mom and dad don't understand. Where I'm like, what the heck is wrong with this kid in my head? So that can be pretty neat. And it's a gift in a lot of ways to have that. And there's the other thing too, is like I tell Benjamin, don't worry about being me. Like you're a character. This is a show. This is different now. Like I've done this and we've written this and here, just do it. And so don't focus too much on being me. So you do kind of step away a little bit when you're once it's once it's being filmed. Now it's too late. It's not me anymore. It's not a memory anymore. It's a show. So
Mhm.
so that helps as well.
When I do think too, like obviously there are shows that can like you can compare where it's like someone who became a comedian wrote about their life and
Yeah.
turned it into a show. But I do love that this genre of like slightly nerdy teenagers taking us through this nostalgia fest,
Yeah.
like that genre of show, which I think you can call it a genre at this point because
Yeah.
there's a couple of them. I do love looking at like our nostalgia through that lens and kind of experiencing it that way. Is that something that was always on your radar when you were both creating and like going to star in this, or did it just naturally come with, you know, going back and telling a story about your life?
Well, I remember being a kid, there was a movie called A Christmas Story. And
Mhm.
that's kind of like the first of these narrator memory
I was
childhood.
going to bring that up. It reminded
Yeah,
me
and
of
that's
my
everything
favorite.
else is a rip off of that. And a bit of the Wonder Years, very much so. The original Wonder Years when I was a kid, that was set in the '60s, and that was in the '80s when I was watching it. So that kind of thing is it's a great genre. It's a great tool. It's a great device, which has become a thing now. And but what I find is when I watched the Wonder Years, it was set in the '60s, but I wasn't watching for nostalgia. I was watching it because I was the same age as the kid in the show.
Mhm.
And I find that a lot now where I hear from families who watch the show together and they'll actually watch it when it's on TV as opposed to waiting to stream it because they come together. It's the only show they watch that way because the parents are watching for nostalgia, but the kids are watching because they're in that age group where these things are happening to them. And they still, doesn't matter if it's the '60s, the '50s, the '80s, or when, you still feel bullied. You still wonder, does that person like me? How do I change? I don't want to be like me. And all these things they're going through, they'll watch it, and it's a neat little trick. And I thought if I can make a show that kids think is for them and parents think is for them, that'll be a neat little trick to pull off. And so far, it seems to be working because I hear a lot from families all the time that this is a show they'll watch, and then they'll go like the they'll talk about what for them. Parents always talk about nostalgia, and the kids all say, "Oh, that's something like that happened to me," and then they'll ask about changing the channel on the actual TV and things like that too, or using a landline as well. But it all comes down to the emotions.
Yeah, and I do think this is also a fun. Normally, with this time period where we're seeing more either serious stuff or it's like a movie set here. It's very rarely do we have a TV show that is a comedy that is kind of set in this era. And so it's fun to kind of explore, like I loved the first episode of season 3 where it was Kokomo. I thought
Oh
that was
yeah.
the funniest, like kind of tie-in of like, here's where we are in history,
Yeah.
but also like Kokomo still rules. Do you guys find little things like that where you're like, here's how we're gonna like make a nod to what was going on at that time while also having so much fun with it, like the Kokomo scene?
Well, music is a great thing because music is, having the real songs in a show is
Mhm.
expensive. But I always thought that was the thing about TV that bothered me when somebody's like, "Oh, it's a new hit song. Let's rock and roll by the Rock and Rollers." It's like that's not a song. That wasn't a thing. So I like, we go after these songs. And I remember when that song came out, everybody was like, "Oh, this song is so stupid. Oh, it's so cheesy." And I'd be like, I kind of like it because I like the Beach Boys because I had an older sense of music, from growing
Mhm.
up in the house. And these like, oh, a band I know is actually at #1. This is amazing. So I would secretly rock out to this in my room. So for me, it was very real. But for things like that, it's like, okay, that's this year. That was a big hit this year. And for anybody who went through that time, you kind of know exactly when Kokomo was #1. But
Mhm.
for anybody else, you kind of get a sense. It's like for me, it was a Beach Boys song. For a younger generation, I know people under 30s, it's John Stamos' song from Full House. So you have like a lot of different ways into Kokomo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a great thing to do. This season, we end this season with Rod Stewart's Forever Young, because that was a big hit at the time. And we
Mhm.
have our junior high graduation with that song. So it's a great way to kind of put people right into time.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm gonna age myself. My Kokomo is the Muppets Treasure Island when
Oh
they
yeah, right. Everybody has a Kokomo. See, everybody. It's
because
great.
I was like, I'm 30, so I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
Muppet Treasure Island. They sing
this is it.
Kokomo.
It's the groove. Yeah, it keeps coming back. That song will not die. And
They never.
and like 30 years from now, someone will be like, "Oh, that's that Son of a Critch song."
But like I learned in Son of a Critch, and you're gonna be
Yeah,
like, did it.
yeah, I
I
got it.
brought Kokomo back.
Yeah,
Um,
keep some money in the Beach Boys' pockets.
yeah.
Beach men at this point. I would hope they'd be beach men at this point.
Yeah, they're boys. Boys, boys, boys
Always
all
would.
the time. I do love there are just so many little things that I think also highlight not only that certain aspects of growing up are universal, but just like watching it in a show that is set, decades before like I went to high school or someone else might have gone to high school, you still are like, yeah, I experienced this, which is, this season where he gets to go to the back of the bus and choose where he wants
Yeah.
to sit. And I did laugh when it was like the ninth graders. I was like, yeah, that's right, because it's like the last year you're gonna want to even attempt to ride a bus is your
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And like little things like that. I know you're pulling from your own memory, but like what do you do to kind of make sure that those moments are not only true to you, but also still true to like the experience? Because it is so universal.
Well, that's what I find though. I find like one thing I've learned with this show is not to be afraid to be too personal,
Mhm.
because as only you care about this, you might think, oh, this is just me. Always people, if they don't have that exact experience, they have a way to relate to it. And that's why, like this show, like even when the first scripts were written, I'd written the script and sent it off to, Malcolm McDowell. And he's an 80-year-old guy born in Liverpool. And he's like, oh, it's so relatable to me. What? And then Benjamin, he really related to it. And he was this Yorkshire kid,
Mhm.
Yorkshire, England, and various things like that. So I I found that's what I found. It's like just write it, and no matter how bizarre it is, and if it's a little off and a little unique, that's cool too. Because we've all seen shows set in different places that are different times. It's a bit, oh, I didn't know that, but really get down to hearts and bones and the nuts and bolts of things. I think it is all pretty relatable. I mean, and there's lots of like phrases that are very unique to the place I grew up, or different things that are, not everybody's going to get. But I think it's okay. Like, if I'm watching Peaky Blinders or something every now and then, it's like, oh, I'll put that in the left, right? Like, I have no idea what you said, but I think that man's angry. And you get away. It's like, okay, I missed that sentence. That's fine.
Yeah.
I have no idea what up the liffey is, but good luck to you, and then you keep moving. Not everything needs an explanation. It's kind of like traveling, I guess, a bit like that.
Well, and I do my last question is more for me being a nerd.
Yeah.
Malcolm McDowell. I
Yeah.
always instantly am like, yes, I love A Clockwork Orange. Like, I know he has such a long career, but that is where I go because
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's Alex. I love him so much. But for you, when you are kind of finding, obviously, Benjamin was important because it is you. But with these stories, we try and find like someone who does connect us to that nostalgia in a way. Was that for you guys, Malcolm, or was it just kind of happenstance that you guys kind of brought him on and people have their own connections to him?
Well, no, it was we had this wonderful Irish casting agency from who had done Game of Thrones and stuff. So we're trying desperately to find Benjamin, and they found us Benjamin. But then they're like, "Hey, Malcolm McDowell might like this." I'm like, "Oh, he's not going to." I'm like, "No, we're going to send it to him." I'm like, "That's great, good for you. Like, way to go, guys. Well, could you also send it to some people that I've never heard of who might do it?" and anyway, so they sent it off to him, and he asked for another script, and we sent him a script, and then he asked for my book, and sent him that, and he read that, and then he asked to have a Zoom, and then by the end of that, he's like, "I'll do it. I'm in." I'm like, "What?" "Oh, I mean, yes, of course you are." I'm like, "We can't afford this. We have to sell some stuff." But so we got him, and he just took over that character, and he just embodied it, and he put a real personal spin on it. And I remember the first day he came to shoot and going like, I wonder how he's going to play it. And then he came in and he did it. I'm like, oh, so that's him. Okay, cool. That's cool. And so no, I never thought we'd get Malcolm, and then we got him, and then I'm so glad now. I can't imagine anybody else in the role. But yeah, and it's kind of weird for Benjamin though, and it's like, because he knows that there's this amazing iconic film that Malcolm has done that he cannot see. Half of that, and then like Caligula and all these things that Malcolm's done, like none of the kids can see until they're 49. And it's like, I'm like, you know what? Even when you're old enough, I don't think today's day and age, you're probably old enough. Like, I don't want to be in the building if you ever watch it when you're an adult. Like, I don't want to know you watched any of this stuff. So Malcolm is like, I just wonder, like, years from now, if they're going to go, up, watching Clockwork Orange. It'll be very weird.
I do like the idea of like you guys finding them sitting in a corner somewhere, just all trying to watch A Clockwork Orange.
Everybody's just crying. It's like, guys, you didn't watch it, did you?
I love it. And I love that Malcolm McDowell is the reason we had to wait till season 3 to get Kokomo because he was too expensive. Everything.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Finally, we're into Kokomo money. This is very exciting.
I love it. Thank you so much for talking with me today. And I can't wait for people to get to see season 3.
Oh, it was such a joy talking to you. Thank you so much. And I love your glasses.
Thank you so much. I love your glasses.
Thank you. Very kind.